So, it's arguably the biggest question of the Cleveland Browns offseason. What should they do with the second overall pick? Hey guys, hope everyone's having a good weekend. Hope everyone got through the week as best as they could, whether that's school, work, or just life in general. The weekdays can drag on sometimes, so glad to make it to the weekend. Hope you're all feeling the same. Any of the weekend workers out there, I don't envy you, but I certainly appreciate you, so shout out to you guys as well. We got a great weekend of NFL playoffs, the divisional round this week. Hopefully get some better games than we did in the wildcard rounds. I'm sure we will, so looking forward to them. But that's not why we're here today. Today, I wanted to talk about and give my initial thoughts on what I believe the Cleveland Browns should do with the second overall pick in the 2025 draft. You know, we got the second overall pick by virtue of being the worst team in the NFL. We had the joint worst record with the Titans, 3-14. Same with the Giants as well. Of course, the Giants and the Patriots did us a favour, and because of that, the Browns have the second overall pick, as we all know. So the big question is, and you know, that's been on the minds of pretty much every Browns fan since it was confirmed, is what they should do with the second overall pick. There's going to be a lot of debate, a lot of talk amongst the fan base, you know, about what everyone thinks they should do. Everyone's going to have their favourite prospects. Everyone's going to have their favourite ideas in what they think they should do. So before I personally go through the evaluation process, you know, in a more in-depth way, leading up to the draft, I just thought it would be important for me to come on here, talk about my initial thoughts, what I think the Browns should do. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I'm some NFL draft expert. I'm not Corey Kinnan by any means. But, you know, I do watch college football. I have been involved in, you know, draft evaluation in some capacity for the Browns for a few years now. So whilst I'm not going to pretend like I'm the smartest person in the room on this topic, you know, I can at least pretend like I know somewhat what I'm talking about. But as I said, I will go through a more in-depth evaluation process leading up to the draft. I'm going to talk to a lot of guys that, you know more about this stuff than me, and maybe my opinion and my thinking changes, you know, when we go through that process. But just as for now, I thought I'd hop on here, give my thoughts on what I think the Browns should do. So first and foremost, the elephant in the room, I suppose. I was going to leave this till last, but as I said, I think it's something that clearly needs to be addressed. The Browns need a quarterback. They are picking second overall, so it would be pretty easy to just say take whatever quarterback they like the most with the second pick. Unfortunately, I personally don't think that any of the quarterbacks this year are worthy of the second overall pick, and I think the Browns will probably come to that same conclusion. You look at the top guys this year, Shedeur Sanders, Cameron Ward. I just don't think that either guys are worthy of a top 2 pick. I think the Browns will probably come to the same conclusion. You then look at guys like Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart, guys that, you know, are fringe first round / day 2 prospects. I just don't think, you know, even if you need a quarterback, which the Browns do, I personally don't believe in reaching for a quarterback just for the sake of taking one. Shedeur is the only one that I would see the Browns even entertaining a top 5 pick on. And whilst, as I said, I don't think they should reach for a quarterback, I'm not going to, you know, throw my hands in the air in protest if they do draft Shedeur Sanders in the top 5, because I would understand why they do it. So again, you know, whilst I'm not the biggest fan of any of these quarterbacks this year, I would accept them drafting Shedeur Sanders in the top 5 if it came to it. But I'd personally rather take a flyer on one of the day 2 guys and bring a veteran free agent in as a bridge. So, as I said, I know it's going to be the biggest talking point is quarterback. It always is. If you're a team drafting high and you need a quarterback, it's the most obvious correlation you can make. But I just think you look at kind of quarterbacks in recent years that, teams have reached on. You look at a Trey Lance, you look at a Zach Wilson, you look at a Kenny Pickett. It doesn't always end well. So I just don't subscribe to the idea that we should just take a quarterback for the sake of taking a quarterback. Don't get me wrong, if they do their evaluation and they fall in love with a Shedeur Sanders or a Jackson Dart, I'd understand, but you don't just take the guy to take him. Cam Ward, I know, is a name that, some Browns fans are very intrigued in. Personally, I'm not interested. We're moving on from a quarterback that refuses to play in structure. So why would we then draft a quarterback who refuses to play in structure? I just don't think the fit is there at all. Whereas a Shedeur Sanders, he might not have, the arm talent that a Cam Ward does, but I just think he's a much better fit for what the Browns want to do at quarterback. So to sum it all up, whilst I don't think the Browns should reach for a quarterback, I don't think any team ever should reach for a quarterback just for the sake of picking a quarterback. I would accept Shedeur Sanders with a top 5 pick. I mean, I'd rather trade back and take Shedeur Sanders, but that's probably unlikely. So whilst it's not, my first or second choice by any means, Shedeur Sanders is the one quarterback, in my opinion, that I wouldn't be angry and shouting in despair if they did, take him with a top 5 pick. Now, moving on to the top 2 scenarios, in my opinion, of what the Browns can do with the second overall pick. They both, result in drafting one of the same 3 players, whether that's through a trade back or just taking one of them at number 2. Those 3 players for me are Abdul Carter, edge out of Penn State, Travis Hunter, wide receiver, cornerback. I personally think he's probably a better corner than wide receiver, but we'll see what position he actually wants to play more. And then finally, Mason Graham, defensive tackle out of Michigan. In my opinion, they are the best 3 players in this draft, regardless of position. You could probably add, Ashton Ginty to that list as well, but as much as the Browns need a running back, I'm not taking one in the top 5, especially not when this class is so deep at the position anyway. So for me, the dream scenario, if I could, have a crystal ball and just pick what happens, it would be a trade back with either New York or Las Vegas. Personally, New York would probably be the better of the 2, just because it would mean you're only dropping back 1 place. You're not going to get a future first for that by any means. A future first that a lot of people want to acquire for next year. We all know why, because Arch Manning's coming out. So, a lot of people would be interested in a future first, but you're not going to get a future first from New York. But what you could get is a pick swap in terms of 2 to 3. So you're only dropping down 1 place. And then if you can pick up, their second round pick, which is pick 34, maybe you've got to chuck in 90, is it 94 the Browns have in the 3rd round? You might have to chuck one of those picks in as well as a swap. But essentially, to get an extra second round pick to drop 1 place and likelihood still get the guy that you wanted would be the best case scenario, in my opinion. You look at New York, they've stuck with Daboll and Joe Sheen. So, guys that have not yet technically picked their quarterback under that current regime. So are they looking to come up for a Shedeur Sanders, for a Cam Ward? That's the question. And if they are, I think you definitely play ball with that. As I said, you try and get that extra second round pick as well. So the Browns would be picking back to back at the start of the second round. you get your first 2 selections of any of the guys that fall out of the first round pick, while still getting, most likely still getting the guy that you wanted anyway. Because if you're willing to trade back with the Giants, then it's because you're probably not interested in the quarterbacks. The Giants are only going to trade up for the quarterbacks, so you'd still have the first pick of the board of whatever guys you like, whilst gaining an extra second round pick essentially for free. That would be the best case scenario, in my opinion, in regards to a trade back. And then the other option, in my opinion, would be the Las Vegas Raiders, sat there at 6. They would have to offer a future first to come up to 2 from 6. So that's probably the route you would go if you want to get that future first for next year, would be that trade with Las Vegas. They do have quite a few picks in this year's draft as well. Whether you could pick up pick 37 or 68 off them as well, would of course be a bonus. But I think they're the wild card team in this. They've sacked everyone, I believe, sacked the GM, they've sacked the head coach, as we all expected. Tom Brady's coming in for his first year as involved in the ownership. Do they want to go big and take a quarterback straight away? Do they hire Deion Sanders as their head coach? If that's the case, then I'm sure they would definitely want to come up to 2 if Shedeur is there. So I think that's the second option. I wouldn't want to drop further back than 6, because I think at 6 you could still get one of the 3 guys that I mentioned, whilst gaining more picks, including an extra first next year. And so if that is a chance that you could have, and you could gain those extra picks and still be in the ballpark to get one of those 3 guys, one of the 3 guys I think they'll target, then that could be some great business. As I said, I wouldn't want to drop further back than 6, purely because at that point I don't think any of those guys are available. So if any team past Vegas wanted to come up to 2, they would have to offer quite a lot, in my opinion. Vegas would have to offer a future first themselves. So, we could be talking 2 future firsts, maybe a player in there as well, if anyone wants to come back from any further down in the draft. But as I said, I personally wouldn't want to do that, just because I think that will take you out of the range. Now, whilst I believe that the Giants and Raiders could be interested in coming up for a quarterback, it is important to remember that just because you want to trade back, that doesn't mean that you'll have trade partners willing to come up. If I don't think any of these quarterbacks are, that good and good enough to be worthy of a top 5 pick, then why would another team sell the farm to come up for them? So it could 100% be a case that none of those teams like any of the quarterbacks enough to come up, and the Browns are forced to make their selection at number 2. If that is the case, I would probably just draft Abdul Carter with the second pick and not look back. I like Travis Hunter, and I would be excited about that pick as well, of course. But the idea of Abdul Carter on the same D-line as Myles Garrett excites me too much to pass up on. He was excellent for Penn State. He's been brilliant this past year in their run to the college football semi-finals. People can say he's a little bit undersized. He's 6'3" and 250. I don't think that's undersized. I think he can play edge in the NFL. We've seen guys with similar builds do it. I've seen a lot of arguments against drafting him, coming mainly from the idea that he's a rotational pass rusher who can't play the run. Completely push back on that. From everything I've seen, from all the tape that I've seen, from all the games that I've seen him play in, he's a more than efficient enough run stopper. And as a pass rusher, he's borderline as unblockable as they come in college football. 12 sacks this past year, 68 total tackles, 2 forced fumbles. He has been excellent. He is, in my opinion, the best pass rusher in the draft and arguably the best player in the draft. Travis Hunter, you could put in that same breath. But as I said, I think just the whole cornerback wide receiver stuff, I do think will hurt his draft stock if he's not ready to commit to one side of the ball. I think some teams might find that a bit much to take the top 3 pick on, maybe. I mean, the talent is there, don't get me wrong, but I think it will just come down to what he wants to do. And then with an Abdul Carter, I think it's just you don't have any of those worries at all. You take Abdul Carter at number 2, you know that is going to be a great pass rusher partner to have next to Myles Garrett for the foreseeable future. So that is personally what I would do if the Browns are unable to find a trade partner. Just take Abdul Carter at number 2 and don't look back. So to sum up my initial thoughts of what I think the Browns should do with the second pick as of now in January, as I said, my thinking and might change as I go through more of an in-depth evaluation process and I talk to more, draft people that are a bit more smarter than me. It could change, but as for now, number 1 option would be trade back with New York or Las Vegas, pick up an extra second round pick off New York and still get your guy, or trade back with Vegas, get a future first, get some more picks on top of that, and still maybe have a chance, at a Mason Graham. Someone who I also think is a really, really good prospect for the Browns. You can never have enough good defensive linemen, and Mason Graham is one of the best interior guys there is in college football and has been for the last few years. So I would be perfectly happy with that as well. Number 2 would be to just, if you can't find a trade partner, you can't get a trade offer that you think is worth it, just take Abdul Carter at number 2. He's my favourite prospect in this draft for the Browns. So that is what I would do as my second option if I can't find a trade partner. And then third option, I suppose, if you do fall in love with one of these quarterbacks, if you do feel like you have to draft a quarterback at number 2, then for me, it would be Shadur Sanders. I know a lot of people think that his dad won't let him come and play for Cleveland. I personally don't subscribe to that. I don't think that's going to be a problem at all. So if you do go the quarterback route, that is what I would do, in my opinion. Now, there are some other guys in this draft that I, of course, like. You look at a Will Johnson out of Michigan, great corner. McMillan, the wide receiver out of Arizona, just a really intriguing prospect at 6'5" and over 200 pounds. 2 brilliant years for Arizona the last 2 years. I, of course, Ashton Jeanty, an unbelievable prospect, an unbelievable running back. But as I said earlier, I'm not taking a running back in the top 5. Tyler Warren, again, similar kind of thing. Great player, but at tight end, are you going to take that in the top 5? I highly doubt it. I like Luther Burden out of Missouri. In terms of the tackles and the O-linemen, Josh Simmons, I would probably say, is the most intriguing prospect for me out of Ohio State. This is a guy that has kind of been played out of position in his college career, was one of the highest recruited, offensive line prospects of the decade coming out of high school, but has just played, been put at the wrong position quite a lot in his college career. But I think he can translate into an NFL tackle. Kelvin Bance Jr., another guy that you would probably look at if that was the case. Will Campbell, I just don't think he's a tackle. I think he's a guard, and to draft a guard with the top 5, I'm not one of these positional value guys to the end, but I'm not drafting a guard top 5 after over an Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, or Travis Hunter. I just don't subscribe to that idea at all. So they are some guys that I do like in this first round range as well. Pardon me. But as I said, with the Browns drafting number 2, I just don't think these guys are going to be anywhere near the ballpark unless they trade down, as I mentioned earlier, further back from the Raiders, which I think would be unlikely. So that's my initial thoughts on what I think the Browns should do with the second overall pick. It hasn't really changed for a few months now, since it looked like the Browns could potentially end up with a top 5 pick, I've kind of been in the camp of just draft any of Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, or Travis Hunter and don't look back. That's kind of been where I've been at. As I said, that could change as the evaluation, process goes on leading up to the draft. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. I don't think it's going to change too much. I still believe, by the end of this evaluation, I still think those 3 guys will be 3 of my top 5 prospects in this draft. But if someone that I speak to over this process can convince me that Shedeur Sanders is better than I initially think, then maybe it will change. But we'll have to wait and see. But that will do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you do enjoy my content, then please drop this video a like, hit the subscribe button. It's free and it really helps out my channel. As I mentioned, I've got loads of stuff coming up over the next few weeks, over the next few months as we go into the off season. Draft stuff, salary cap stuff, free agent stuff, you name it, I'll be talking about it. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of that. I'm trying to build a community of Cleveland Browns fans, and as I always say, even if I only get to talk to one fan a day, I'm happy because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Have an amazing weekend, guys. Enjoy the divisional round of the NFL playoffs, but most importantly, go Browns.